The British Museum. Sub-Basement 3. Department of Anomalous Antiquities. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Senior Archivist, Custodian of Restricted Collections. What you are about to hear has been recovered from sealed files, letters, journals, and testimonies once thought too disturbing for public record. Every statement you hear is drawn from Britain's forgotten centuries, the whispered history that hides between faith and fear. These are the National Occult Archives, filed, preserved, never closed. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1547M. Classification Vicar's Testament. Date of statement 9th March 1547. Location Cumbria, Northern England. Author Reverend Thomas Blackwell. Vicar of St. Mary's Testament Reverend Thomas Blackwell. Do record what I witnessed in the bell tower. The bells rang on their own for 7 nights. No hand pulled the ropes. No wind moved through the tower. I climbed the stairs each night to investigate. The ropes swung without touch. The bells sang their own song. On the 8th night, I remained in the tower until dawn. The air grew cold as winter frost. My breath became clouds of white. The ropes began to move at midnight. I watched them swing with purpose. Back and forth they went. The bells rang out across the valley. I reached for the nearest rope to stop it. My hand passed through as if it was smoke. The rope continued its motion. I felt something brush past me in the darkness. A presence moved through that space. It circled the tower room 7 times. Each circuit brought a stronger cold. My bones ached with the chill. The bells rang louder with each pass. I spoke prayers aloud to ward against evil. The presence did not leave. It settled into the bells themselves. I heard a voice within the ringing. It spoke no words I could understand. The language was ancient and strange. Perhaps Latin, perhaps older still. The voice repeated the same phrases, over and over through the night. When dawn came, the ringing stopped. The cold lifted from the tower, but the presence remained within the bells. I feel it there still. Every night at midnight, the bells begin again. The village has grown used to the sound. They believe it is my hand that rings them. I have not told them otherwise. Some truths are too heavy to share. The presence lives in those bells now. It calls out through the bronze. Its voice echoes across the hills. I no longer climb the tower at midnight. Some things should be left to their vigil. The bells will ring long after I am gone. The presence has found its home. Reverend Thomas Blackwell, Vicar of St. Mary's, Cumbria, Northern England, 9th March, 1547. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Tower demolished in 1892. Parish records confirm unexplained bell ringing ceased immediately upon removal of the bronze bells. Current whereabouts of the bells unknown. Investigation ongoing. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1623D. Classification Monk's account. Date of statement 21st November 1623. Location Durham, Northeast England. Author Brother Edmund Thorne, Benedictine monk. Account 1 Brother Edmund Thorne. Do testify about the visitor in the scriptorium. A figure appears each night when the candles burn low. It sits at the far desk near the window, the same place Brother William once worked. Brother William passed from this world 3 months ago. He collapsed over his manuscript. His heart simply stopped beating. We found him slumped across the pages. His work remained unfinished. Now something returns to complete it. I have seen it with my own eyes. The figure wears our robes. Its hood obscures any face. Its hands move across the parchment. I hear the scratch of quill on paper. The sound continues through the hours of darkness. I approached once to see what it wrote. The figure did not acknowledge my presence. I looked over its shoulder at the manuscript. The words were in Brother William's hand exactly. Each letter formed in his particular way, the same flourishes and curves he always used. I spoke to it then. I asked if it was truly Brother William. The figure stopped writing. Its hand remained poised above the page. Slowly, it turned its head toward me. The hood remained empty. Nothing looked back at me from within, yet I felt seen by something. I retreated to my own desk. My hands shook for an hour after. The figure returned to its work. Night after night it continues. The manuscript grows longer. Page after page fills with text. I have read what it writes. The work discusses matters of the soul, what happens when the spirit cannot rest, when tasks remain incomplete, when purpose binds us beyond death. Brother William devoted 10 years to this manuscript. He believed it would be his greatest work. Death took him before completion. Now he returns to finish what he began. The other brothers have seen the figure too. We no longer work in the scriptorium after dark. We leave it to its purpose. Each morning we find new pages completed. The manuscript approaches its end. Perhaps then Brother William will find peace. Until that day, he remains bound to his work. Purpose holds him here. Brother Edmund Thorne, Benedictine monk, Durham, Northeast England, 21st November 1623. Archivist note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, manuscript recovered from Durham archives. Final pages contain increasingly erratic script, suggesting deterioration of whatever continued the work. Last entry dated 3 days after Brother William's documented death. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1589K. Classification: Abbess's record. Date of statement: 4th August 1589. Location: Yorkshire Dales, Northern England. Author: Mother Superior Catherine Wells, Abbess of St. Hilda's Record. My Mother Superior Catherine Wells. Do document the child in the cloister garden. A girl of perhaps 8 years appears at twilight. She wears a simple dress of grey wool. Her feet are bare upon the stones. She walks the same path each evening, around the garden 3 times. Then she kneels before the rose bushes. Her lips move in silent prayer. No sound comes from her mouth. Sister Agnes first saw the child 2 weeks ago. She thought the girl was from the village. She approached to ask if the child was lost. The girl did not respond. Sister Agnes reached out to touch her shoulder. Her hand passed through empty air. The child continued her prayer. Sister Agnes fled to find me. Together, we returned to the garden. The child remained at her devotions. We watched her for some time. She seemed unaware of our presence. When darkness fell completely, she faded from sight, like mist dissolving in the wind. Since then, many sisters have witnessed her. She appears each evening without fail, always the same walk, always the same prayer. I consulted our records from years past. I found mention of a child named Mary. She lived here 50 years ago, orphaned and raised within these walls. She died of fever in the summer, 8 years old when death claimed her. She loved the garden above all things, spent hours among the roses. The sisters of that time buried her near the bushes she cherished. Now she returns to tend them still, or perhaps to pray at her own resting place. We have tried speaking Latin prayers nearby. The child shows no reaction. We have blessed the ground where she kneels. Still she appears each evening. Some of the younger sisters are frightened. They avoid the garden after sunset. But I see no malice in the child, only devotion that death could not end. She tends her garden as she did in life. This is her purpose. This is her peace. We will not disturb her vigil. The roses bloom beautifully where she kneels, more beautiful than anywhere else in the garden. Perhaps her presence nourishes them. Perhaps love remains long after the body fails. Mother Superior, Catherine Wells, Abbess of St. Hilda's, Yorkshire Dales, Northern England, 4th August, 1589. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Garden site excavated in 1907. Small grave found beneath rose bushes containing remains of young female, approximately 8 years old. Dating consistent with 1539. Multiple witnesses report childlike figure in vicinity even today. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1456T. Classification Doctor's Journal. Date of statement 17th February 1456. Location Cornwall, Southwest England. Author, Dr. Jonathan Hartley, physician. Journal entry 1, Dr. Jonathan Hartley, do record the affliction I cannot cure. A patient came to me with a peculiar complaint. Her name is Margaret Ash, a widow of 30 years. She claims something follows her from room to room. It speaks to her in whispers. The voice comes from behind walls, from beneath floorboards, from inside cupboards and chests. She hears it constantly, day and night without rest. At first I believed it was melancholy, a mind troubled by loneliness and grief. I prescribed rest and herbal remedies. She returned a week later. The voice had grown louder. Now it spoke her name repeatedly. She could make out words clearly, always in Latin. Always the same phrases. Memento mori, tempus fugit, mors certa. I accompanied her to her home to investigate, a small cottage on the edge of the moors. We sat in her parlour as darkness fell. For an hour I heard nothing unusual. Then the whispers began. Soft at first, like wind through cracks, growing steadily louder. The voice spoke Margaret's name. Then those Latin words again. Remember death. Time flies. Death is certain. I searched for the source. Behind the walls I found nothing. Beneath the floor only earth. Yet the voice continued. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. Margaret wept with relief that I heard it too. She had feared for her sanity. Now we both knew the truth. Something spoke within that house. I consulted with a priest from the village. Father Benedict came to perform a blessing. The whispers continued even during his prayers. The voice laughed when he spoke of God, a dry, rasping sound that came from the walls. Father Benedict left in haste. He would not return despite my requests. Margaret has grown thin from lack of sleep. The voice never stops now. Even in full daylight, it whispers and calls. I have given her what comfort I can, but I fear my remedies are useless here. This is no ailment of the body, nor is it madness of the mind. Something shares that house with her, something that knows the old tongue, something that reminds her constantly of death's approach. I have advised her to leave the cottage. She refuses. She was born in that house. She will die there, she says. Perhaps that is what the voice wants. Margaret Ashe, widow Cornwall, Southwest England, 17th February 1456. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Property records show cottage abandoned in 1457. Built atop site of dissolved monastery chapel. Ground-penetrating radar reveals extensive crypt network beneath. Voice phenomenon reported by multiple subsequent owners until demolition in 1823. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1701 H. Classification. Prior's testimony. Date of statement 3rd October 1701. Location Somerset, Southwest England. Author Prior Edmund Ashworth, Augustinian Order Testimony 1. Prior Edmund Ashworth, do testify about what walks our corridors. Footsteps echo through the monastery after midnight. Heavy boots upon stone floors. They walk from the chapel to the dormitory. The same route every night. We have all heard them. Brother Paul claims he has seen the walker, a figure in soldier's garb from centuries past. Chainmail and leather armor, a sword at his belt. Brother Paul watched from his doorway. The figure passed within arm's reach. It did not turn or acknowledge him. Its eyes stared straight ahead, fixed on some unseen destination. Brother Paul said the face was grey as ash, the expression empty of all feeling. When it reached the dormitory end, it simply vanished. The footsteps stopped mid-stride. I have researched our monastery's history. This building stands upon an older foundation. Before monks lived here, soldiers garrisoned this site, a fort to guard the valley approach. Records speak of a massacre in the year 1142. Enemy forces overwhelmed the garrison. Every soldier perished. Their bodies were buried in mass graves nearby. The fort fell to ruin. Our order built atop the stones decades later. We thought to consecrate ground stained with violence, to bring peace where blood was shed. But peace has not come. The soldiers remain. At least one of them still walks his rounds, performing duties that death did not end. I have tried to lay him to rest. Prayers spoken at every hour. Blessings upon the stones he treads. Holy water sprinkled along his path. Nothing breaks his eternal patrol. He walks as he did in life, guarding a fort that no longer exists. Defending brothers who died centuries ago. Purpose binds him to this place. Duty holds him here. Some vows transcend the grave. Some orders cannot be disobeyed even by death. The brothers have grown accustomed to the sound. We no longer wake at the footsteps. They are simply part of our nights now. Another voice in our evening prayers. Another soul we remember. Though he does not remember us, his attention remains on his patrol, forever walking between chapel and dormitory, forever guarding what is already lost. Prior Edmund Ashworth, Augustinian Order Somerset, Southwest England, 3rd October 1701. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Archaeological survey confirmed Norman fortification beneath monastery foundations. Mass grave excavated in 1956, containing 47 individuals, many showing violent trauma. Footstep phenomena continues to be reported by current property owners. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1678P. Classification Curate statement. Date of statement 19th May 1678. Location Northumberland, Northern England. Author: Reverend Charles Ashford, Curate of St. Andrew's Statement. Why, Reverend Charles Ashford, do state what I have found in our crypt. Something breathes down there in the darkness. I heard it when I descended to retrieve old records. A slow, steady rhythm, like lungs drawing air. No one living resides in that space. Only stone coffins and bones. Yet the breathing continues. I lit my lantern and searched the shadows. Nothing moved in the light, but the breathing came from everywhere. From the walls themselves, it seemed. I touched the stones to feel for draughts. They were warm beneath my palm, warm as living flesh. I pulled my hand back in revulsion. The breathing grew louder at my touch, faster and more desperate, like someone struggling for air. I called out to ask who was there. The breathing stopped immediately. Silence filled the crypt, heavy and waiting. I stood frozen in that quiet. My lantern flickered despite no wind. Then the breathing began again, slower this time, calm and measured, as if whatever it was had regained composure. I completed my task quickly, retrieved the records I needed, fled back up the stairs. I have not descended since. Other clergy have reported the same thing. Father Morris heard it 30 years ago. He documented it in his own journals. Before him, Reverend Phelps mentioned strange sounds below. Each generation discovers the breathing anew. I have examined every coffin from above. All are sealed with lead and stone. None show signs of disturbance. Yet something draws breath down there, something that lives in the spaces between death and life. I considered having the crypt sealed, but this church has stood for 400 years. The breathing has been there almost as long. To seal it might trap something that should not be contained. Better to let it breathe in the darkness. Better to leave it to its deep meditation. We use the crypt only when necessary now, always in pairs, never alone. The breathing does not harm us. It simply reminds us it is there, waiting in the dark beneath our feet, drawing breath that needs no body, existing in a state I cannot name. I pray for whatever it is, though I do not know if prayer can reach it. Reverend Charles Ashford, Curate of St. Andrew's, Northumberland, Northern England, 19th May 1678. Archivist note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Acoustic analysis conducted in 1989 detected rhythmic sound patterns at 0.2 Hz below normal human hearing range. Source indeterminate. Thermal imaging shows no heat signatures. Phenomenon defies conventional explanation. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1534, W classification. Hermit's record. Date of statement 11th January 1534. Location: Peak District, Central England. Author: Brother Oswald Reed. Hermit record. Why, Brother Oswald Reed, do record what shares my hermitage. I live alone on this mountainside. A small stone cell is my home. I tend a garden and pray in solitude. This is the life I chose. But I am not alone here. Something else occupies this space. I see it from the corner of my eye, a shadow that moves when I turn away. It stands in my doorway at dusk, a figure darker than the growing night. No features can I discern, only the shape of a man, tall and thin beyond nature. It watches me as I pray. I feel its attention like weight upon my back. When I acknowledge it, the presence fades, but it never truly leaves. It remains just beyond sight. just beyond knowing. At night, I hear it moving through my cell, footsteps that have no body. Objects shift position while I sleep. My prayer book moves from shelf to table. My cup turns upside down. Small changes that speak of another hand. I tried to leave once. I walked down the mountain path, made it perhaps a mile. Then I felt the pull, a need to return that I could not resist. My feet turned back without my choosing. I climbed to my hermitage again. The shadow waited in the doorway. I understood then. This place belongs to it. I am merely a guest here. I researched the mountain's history in the village. An old woman told me stories. A hermit lived here 200 years ago. He died in his cell during winter. No one found him until spring. By then he was one with the stone. His body had merged with the floor. They buried what they could separate, left the rest sealed within. I've examined my floor carefully. There are marks in the stone, shapes that might once have been human, worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Perhaps the hermit never left his post. Perhaps his devotion held him here. Now he shares this space with me, two hermits in one small cell, one living, one beyond life, both dedicated to solitude and prayer. I have made my peace with this arrangement. The presence means no harm. It simply persists in its purpose, as do I. We are brothers in isolation, bound to this mountain, bound to our vigil. When I die, perhaps I too will remain. Another shadow in the doorway, another presence in the stone. Brother Oswald Reed, Hermit Peak District, Central England, 11th January 1534. Archivists note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Hermitage Ruins, examined in 1978. Floor stones contain organic material fused with limestone, consistent with prolonged contact with decomposing tissue. Local accounts mention seeing lights in ruins after dark. Investigation inconclusive. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1692B. Classification: Bishop's Testament. Date of statement: 7th June 1692. Location: Canterbury, South East England. Author: Bishop William Thornbury. Testament 1. Bishop William Thornbury, do testify about the mirror in my chambers. It hangs above my washstand. An old piece, framed in tarnished silver. The glass is spotted with age. I have owned it for 20 years. Only recently has it shown me strange things, reflections that should not be there. I see movement behind me when I'm alone, figures passing through my room. When I turn, nothing is there. The room stands empty, but the mirror shows a different truth. In its surface, people walk through my chambers, men and women in old-fashioned dress, priests and pilgrims from centuries past. They move about their business, unaware that I watch them, unaware that centuries separate us. I see them clearly in the glass. Their faces are detailed and real. Some I recognize from portraits in the cathedral. Bishops who held my position long ago, dead for hundreds of years. Yet they walk through my rooms. They sit at my desk. They kneel in prayer where I kneel. The mirror shows me time folded upon itself, past and present existing together. I conducted an experiment. I held my hand up to the mirror. My reflection appeared as expected. But behind me, a figure approached. A man in bishop's robes from another age. He reached for my shoulder. I felt nothing. But in the mirror, his hand passed through me. We occupied the same space, separated by time, but joined in reflection. His mouth moved as if speaking. I heard no words, only silence in my room, but I watched his lips form prayers, Latin words I could read but not hear. When I blink, the figures vanish. For a moment, the mirror shows only me. Then they return, continuing their eternal rounds. I have stopped using the mirror for its purpose. I cannot bear to see them behind me, to know that I walk where they walked, to understand that time is thinner than we believe. The mirror holds something within its silver, some property that reveals what should stay hidden. I have covered it with cloth, but at night I hear sounds in my chambers, footsteps and whispered prayers. The cloth cannot blind the mirror's gift, cannot stop it from showing truth. I am not alone in these rooms. I have never been alone here. The bishops before me remain at their posts, eternal servants to the cathedral. One day I will join them. Another figure in someone else's mirror. Another ghost walking familiar halls. Bishop William Thornbury, Canterbury, South East England, 7th June 1692. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, mirror recovered from estate sale in 1891. Currently stored in NOA facility. Multiple staff report seeing figures in reflection that do not match room's occupants. Mirror has been documented showing individuals confirmed deceased. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1723G. Classification: Nurse's account. Date of statement: 24th September 1723. Location: Bristol, southwest England. Author: Mistress Jane Pemberton. Nurse account R. Mistress Jane Pemberton. Do account for the patient in room 7. I tend the sick at St. Bartholomew's Hospital. Room 7 sits at the end of the north corridor, a small chamber with one window. 3 weeks ago, a man occupied that bed. His name was Thomas Gray, a merchant. He arrived with fever and weakness. His condition worsened despite our care. He passed quietly in the night. We prepared his body for burial. The room was cleaned and prepared for the next patient, but the next patient refused to stay. He claimed someone already occupied the bed, a man who would not move for him. I assured him the room was empty. He insisted otherwise. He saw a figure lying in the bed, grey-faced and still. We moved him to another room. The second patient reported the same thing, a man in the bed who would not respond, who lay as if sleeping, but would not wake. I entered room 7 myself to investigate. The bed appeared empty to my eyes. Fresh sheets white and smooth, no indentation where a body might rest. But the air in that room felt different, heavy and cold, as if winter had settled in that space alone. I touched the bed linens. They were ice cold beneath my hand, as if a frozen body had just risen. I called for the physician, Dr. Lawrence. Together we examined the room. He saw nothing unusual until he approached the bed. Then his face went pale. He staggered backward. When I asked what troubled him, he would not say, only that we should not use room 7 again. We have sealed the door, placed other patients in different chambers, but at night I hear sounds from within. The creak of bed ropes, the rustle of sheets, the slow, laboured breathing of a sick man. Thomas Gray remains in room 7. Death did not move him from that bed. He lies there still, caught in his final illness, repeating his last hours endlessly. I have tried entering at night. I carry a candle to light the darkness. The flame dies as soon as I cross the threshold. snuffed out by a cold that should not exist. In the blackness I hear his breathing, weak and rattling, the sound of lungs failing. I speak to him in the dark. I tell him he is gone, that his suffering is ended. The breathing pauses when I speak, then continues unchanged. He cannot hear me, or perhaps he hears but cannot respond. Trapped in the moment of his death, unable to move forward or back. We leave room 7 empty now, a chamber for one patient only. Thomas Gray, still dying, still drawing those terrible breaths, forever bound to his sickbed. Mistress Jane Pemberton, Nurse Bristol, Southwest England, 24th September, 1723. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, hospital records confirm Thomas Gray died in room 7 on September the 3rd, 1723. Room remained unused until hospital demolition in 1867. Multiple attendants documented identical experiences. Current site occupied by municipal building with no reported phenomena. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1591L. Classification Friar's Journal. Date of statement 8 March 1591. Location Oxfordshire, Central England. Author Brother Marcus Stone, Franciscan Friar. Journal Entry 1. Brother Marcus Stone, do record the singing in our chapel. It begins at 3 in the morning. A single voice raised in Latin hymns, clear and pure as any I have heard, but no one sings. The chapel stands empty at that hour. We have all heard it. Brother Timothy and I investigated together. We entered the chapel before 3 o'clock, sat in the pews and waited. The hour arrived. The singing began. A voice filled the space around us. It came from the altar area, from where the choir once stood in years past. We saw no one, only empty air that carried perfect song. The voice sang the morning psalms, every word correct and properly intoned. When the hymn ended, silence returned. We searched the chapel thoroughly, behind every pillar and screen. Nothing explained what we heard. The following night, we tried again. This time we brought Father Bernard. He is old and wise in these matters. We 3 waited in the darkness. At 3 o'clock, the voice returned. Father Bernard's face showed recognition. After the singing stopped, he told us what he knew. 50 years ago, a young novice lived here. His name was Brother Gabriel. His voice was considered a gift from God. He led the choir in every service. One winter, he caught a fever. It stole his voice before it took his life. He died unable to sing, unable to offer his gift to God one final time. Father Bernard was a young monk then. He remembers Brother Gabriel's sorrow, how he wept at losing his voice, how he begged for one more chance to sing. Now he has that chance. Every morning at 3 o'clock he returns. He sings the psalms he loved in life, his voice restored in death. He performs his devotion eternally, the gift he could not give in his final days. We no longer try to stop it. We have come to treasure the singing. It reminds us that dedication transcends death, that love of God continues beyond the grave. Some brothers rise at 3 now. They come to the chapel to listen, to hear Brother Gabriel's eternal praise. He sings for all of us, for the brothers he knew and those who came after. His voice fills our chapel with holiness, a reminder that some gifts are too precious to silence. Even death cannot still such devotion. We are blessed to hear him, to share our chapel with his song. Brother Gabriel may be gone from this world, but his voice remains, forever young, forever perfect, forever raised in praise. Brother Marcus Stone, Franciscan Friar, Oxfordshire, Central England, 8th March 1591. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Chapel, converted to private residence in 1789. Current owners report male singing voice at approximately 3 a.m. Recording attempts yield only silence. Phenomenon audible to human ear, but not electronic equipment. Acoustic anomaly or something else. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1645N. Classification: Deacon's testimony. Date of statement: 1st December 1645. Location: Shropshire, Western England. Author: Deacon Peter Wolfe Testimony 1. Deacon Peter Wolfe. Do testify about the woman in the churchyard. She appears every night at midnight, always at the same grave, a simple marker for one Elizabeth Marsh. The woman kneels at the stone, her head bowed in grief, her hands clasped in prayer. She wears a dress of deep mourning black. Her face is hidden behind a dark veil. I first saw her 2 months ago. I was locking the church for the night. Movement in the yard caught my eye. I approached to see who visited so late. She did not acknowledge my presence. I spoke to her, asked if she needed assistance. She did not respond, did not move or turn. I moved closer, stood directly beside her. Still, she gave no sign of awareness. I reached out to touch her shoulder. My hand found only cold air. She was not solid, not flesh and blood. I stumbled backward in shock. She continued her vigil, unmoved by my discovery. I researched Elizabeth Marsh's history. She died 40 years ago, only 20 years old, taken by illness in the winter. The woman who mourns must be her mother, also dead these 30 years, buried 3 stones away from her daughter. Yet every night she returns, to kneel at the grave, to pray for the child she lost. Grief has bound her to this place. Love stronger than death itself. I have watched her many nights since. She arrives as the clock strikes 12, remains for exactly 1 hour, then fades like morning mist. Other parishioners have seen her too. We no longer fear the sight. We understand her purpose. She is a mother at her child's grave. Time means nothing to such devotion. Years pass, but her grief remains fresh. As strong as the day Elizabeth died, I believe she will continue this vigil forever, or until some release comes, until she can accept her loss, until love allows her to rest. For now she kneels in the cold, night after night, forever mourning, forever praying for her daughter. A mother's love that death cannot diminish, a bond that holds beyond the grave. I leave the churchyard gate open now, so she may enter freely, so nothing bars her from her child. It is the least I can do. For grief that knows no ending, for love that will not fade. Deacon Peter Wolfe, Shropshire, Western England, 1st December 1645. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Graves of Elizabeth Marsh and Sarah Marsh, confirmed in church records. Figure in black reported continuously from 1645 to present day. Appears unaffected by churchyard renovations or modern lighting. Grief phenomenon or residual haunting. Evidence suggests both. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1714C. Classification: Verger's statement. Date of statement: 16th of July 1714. Location: Devon, southwest England. Author: Samuel Briggs. Church Verger Statement 1. Samuel Briggs do state, what I found in the tower stairwell. I climbed the stairs yesterday to check the clock mechanism. Halfway up, I met someone descending. A man in priest's robes. Old-fashioned style from my grandfather's time. The stairwell is narrow. Only one person can pass at a time. I pressed against the wall to let him by. He did not acknowledge me, did not slow his pace. He walked directly through me, through my body, as if I were empty air. I felt intense cold as he passed, a chill that reached my bones. My breath froze in my lungs. Then he was below me on the stairs. I turned to look. The stairwell was empty. No one descended below. No footsteps echoed in the tower. I stood shaking on those steps, unable to understand what I experienced. I completed my task with the clock. My hands trembled as I worked. Later, I described the man to our vicar. Father Thomas listened carefully, then showed me portraits in the vestry, paintings of past priests who served here. I recognized the man immediately. Father Edmund Cross, who served from 1655 to 1689, dead for 25 years, yet still climbing his tower stairs. Father Thomas was not surprised. He told me others have reported the same encounter. Father Cross climbed the tower daily, when alive, to wind the clock and check its mechanism, a task he took as personal duty. He never missed a day in 34 years of service. Even in his final illness, he climbed those stairs. The day before he died, he made the ascent, wound the clock one last time, descended carefully on weakened legs. The next morning, they found him in his bed, passed peacefully in his sleep. But his duty did not end with death. He still climbs the tower, still tends the clock, still performs the task he loved. I see him often now, 2 or 3 times a week, always on the stairs, always moving with purpose, always dressed in his old robes. He never varies his route, never acknowledges the living. His attention remains on his duty, the clock that needs winding, the mechanism that needs checking, work that binds him here, purpose that death could not release. I have grown used to him. I nod when we pass. Though he does not see me, we are 2 vergers in one tower, separated by time but sharing the space, both devoted to keeping the clock running, both bound to this tower by duty, his eternal, mine merely mortal. Samuel Briggs, Church Verger, Devon, Southwest England, 16th July 1714. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, tower stairs, examined in 1983 during renovation. Several workers reported passing translucent figure in priest's robes. Clock mechanism still functional, maintained by person or persons unknown. Temperature drops of 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, documented on stairs at irregular intervals. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1567R. Classification: Anchorite's record. Date of statement: 29th April 1567. Location: Norfolk, Eastern England. Author: Sister Margaret Winters. Anchorite record 1. Sister Margaret Winters's. Do record what enters my cell. I am sealed in this small room by choice, a servant of God in holy isolation. One window opens to the church, another to the world outside. Food passes through a small opening. I see no one face to face. This is my chosen life. But I am not alone here. Something shares my cell. I feel it beside me when I pray. A presence kneeling where no body exists. I hear breath that is not mine, slow and steady in the darkness. At first, I believed it was a demon, sent to test my faith. I prayed for protection, spoke psalms aloud to drive it away. But the presence remained. It did not flee from holy words. It seemed drawn to them instead. When I pray, it grows stronger, more present and defined. I can almost see it then. A shadow with suggestion of form, kneeling beside me in devotion. I spoke to Father Martin through my church window, described what I experienced. He researched the history of my cell. Before me, another Anchorite lived here, Sister Catherine, sealed within these walls. She spent 40 years in holy isolation, died in her devotions. They found her kneeling in prayer, already cold when they opened the door. Father Martin believes Sister Catherine remains, that her spirit continues the vigil, unable or unwilling to leave her post. I have come to accept her presence. We pray together in the darkness. 2 anchorites in one cell, both devoted to the same purpose. She teaches me patience, how to endure the years of solitude, how to find joy in isolation. I feel her guidance in my prayers, a wisdom born of decades, a peace that death only deepened. Sometimes I hear her voice, barely a whisper in the silence. Latin prayers from her own time, different words than I use, older forms and phrasings, but the same devotion underneath, the same love of God, the same acceptance of this narrow life. We are sisters in our solitude, companions in our chosen imprisonment. She will remain here long after I am gone, forever sealed in this cell, forever kneeling in prayer, and perhaps I will join her then. 2 shadows praying side by side, 2 anchorites bound eternally to this stone room. It is not a fate I fear, to continue in death what I began in life, to remain at my post forever, serving God beyond the boundary of death. Sister Margaret Winters, Anchorite, Norfolk, Eastern England, 29th April, 1567. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Anchorite cell sealed in 1612 after Sister Margaret's death. Opened in 1891 during church renovation. 2 female skeletons found kneeling side by side, both positioned as if in prayer. Arrangement suggests intention, purpose unclear. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1639F. Classification: Sacristan's account. Date of statement: 12th November 1639. Location: Lancashire, Northwest England. Author: Robert March. Sacristan of St. Peter's account. Robert March. Do account for the candles that light themselves. Every evening I snuff the altar candles. 6 tall candles in brass holders. I extinguish them carefully. Check that each wick is fully dark. Lock the church and go home. Every morning I return to 6 candles burning, bright flames dancing in the dawn light. The wax has melted down significantly, as if they burned through the night. At first I thought someone entered after I left, perhaps the vicar performing late prayers. I asked Father William about it. He knew nothing of nighttime visits. I began checking the locks more carefully, examining windows for signs of entry. Everything remained secure. No one could enter after I sealed the doors. yet the candles burned. I decided to watch through the night. I hid myself in the choir stall, waited in darkness to see what happened. Hours passed in silence. Near midnight, I heard a sound, a whisper of movement near the altar. I peered through the carved screen. A figure stood before the candles, robed in white like an altar server. I could not see the face. The hood obscured all features. The figure raised its hands, gestured over each candle in turn. Flames sprang to life at the motion. 6 candles burning without flint or tinder, without any natural means of lighting. The figure stood back, lowered its head in prayer, remained there for some time, then turned and walked toward the vestry door. I watched it pass within feet of me. It made no sound upon the stones. When it reached the door, it did not open it, simply passed through the solid wood, gone as if it never existed. The candles continued burning. I remained hidden until dawn, afraid to approach the altar, afraid to extinguish what had been lit. When morning came, I examined the candles. The wax showed hours of burning, but the wicks were strange. They did not char or blacken. They remained pale, as if never touched by flame. I told Father William everything. He was silent for a long time. Then he told me of the boy, a young altar server 50 years ago, named Thomas Webb, devoted to his duties, especially the lighting of candles. He died of sudden fever, only 12 years old. His last words were prayers for the altar, concerned that no one would light the candles properly. Father William believes Thomas still serves, still performs his duty each night, lighting candles that I extinguish, maintaining the eternal flame. I no longer try to stop it. I snuff the candles each evening. Thomas lights them each night. We share the duty between us, one living, one beyond life, both devoted to the same task. Robert March, Sacristan of St. Peter's, Lancashire, Northwest England, 12th November 1639. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, church destroyed by fire in 1723. Brass candle holders recovered from ruins now in museum collection. Security guard reports candles lighting spontaneously in display case after hours. Phenomenon continues despite location change. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1706V. Classification: Rector's Journal. Date of statement: 5th February 1706. Location: Worcestershire, Central England. Author: Reverend James Hartford. Rector Journal Entry 1. Reverend James Hartford. Do record the congregation I cannot see. Every Sunday during service, I sense them. People sitting in the back pews. I feel their attention on me as I preach. Hear the rustle of their movements, the creak of old wood as they shift position. But when I look, the pews are empty. Only my visible congregation fills the front rows. 20 or 30 souls attend each week. Farmers and their families from nearby lands. They sit close to the pulpit. The back third of the church remains vacant. Yet I know others are there. I hear them stand for hymns, hear voices join the singing, faint and distant, but unmistakable. My congregation hears them too. We discussed it after service last week. They are not frightened by the phantom voices. They say the dead have always attended here, that the church belongs to all its members, living and otherwise. Mrs. Cooper told me her grandmother spoke of this, the invisible congregation that comes to worship, souls who love this church in life, who cannot bear to leave it in death. They maintain their Sunday devotion, sitting in their familiar places, singing the hymns they learned as children. I have come to accept their presence. I preach to both congregations now, the living and the lingering. My words reach across the boundary, touch souls on both sides of death. Sometimes I see movement in those back pews, a shadow shifting, a suggestion of form. There and gone in a moment, I bless them all at service end, the visible and the invisible. All are God's children. All deserve His grace. The living congregation thanks me as they leave, shakes my hand at the door. The others depart in silence. No footsteps on the path, no voices in goodbye, but I feel them leaving, moving through the churchyard to their graves, returning to their rest until next Sunday. This church has stood for 300 years. Generations have worshipped within these walls. Many lie buried in the yard outside. Their bodies rest in earth. But their spirits remember Sunday mornings, remember the comfort of familiar hymns, remember the peace of prayer. They come back each week to feel that peace again, to join in worship one more time. I am honored to serve them all, the living who sit before me, the dead who fill the empty pews, all united in devotion, all part of one eternal congregation. Reverend James Hartford, Rector, Worcestershire, Central England. 5th February 1706. Archivists. Note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft church services continue today. Current rector reports auditory phenomena during worship. Audio recordings capture multiple voice sources beyond visible attendees. Acoustic analysis suggests minimum 40-50 individual voices. Census shows regular attendance of 15 to 20 living persons. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1582M. Classification: Pilgrim's Testament. Date of statement: 18th October 1582. Location: Wiltshire, Southern England. Author: John Fletcher. Pilgrim Testament 1, John Fletcher. Do testify about the road to Glastonbury. I walk the pilgrim path in devotion, a journey I make each autumn. The route passes through ancient lands. Some places feel heavier than others, weighted with more than earth and stone. 3 miles outside Salisbury, the road narrows. Trees grow close on either side. Their branches form a tunnel overhead. I entered this passage at dusk. The light failed quickly beneath the canopy. I hurried my pace to reach the other end. Ahead, I saw another traveller, a figure in monk's robes. Walking the same direction as myself, I called out a greeting. The figure did not respond, did not turn or slow. I quickened my steps to catch up. No matter how fast I walked, the distance remained. The monk stayed always ahead, just beyond reach. I tried running. My breath came hard. My legs ached with effort. Still the monk moved ahead at the same steady pace. Never faster, never slower. Always the same distance away. I realized then something was wrong. No living person walks at such a speed, not without effort or sign of exertion. The monk glided along the road, feet barely touching the ground. I stopped running, stood gasping for air. The monk continued without pause, moved around a bend and disappeared from sight. When I reached that bend, moments later, the road was empty. No figure ahead, no sign anyone had passed this way. I emerged from the tree tunnel shaking. At the next village, I asked about the road. The innkeeper knew the place I described. He said many travellers report the monk, a figure that leads but cannot be caught, that walks the pilgrim road eternally. Some say he died on this path centuries ago, struck down by thieves, his journey left incomplete. Now he walks it endlessly, forever travelling toward a destination he can never reach, forever moving forward without arrival. The innkeeper warned me not to follow. Those who chase the monk too far become lost. The road shifts around them. They wander for hours in the same small stretch, unable to find the way forward or back, trapped in the monk's eternal journey. I continued my pilgrimage by a different route, added a day to my travel, but I would not walk that road again, would not follow the monk further. Some paths are meant for the dead alone. Some journeys have no ending. I pray for him when I can, for the monk trapped on his road. May he find rest someday. May his journey finally end. Until then, he walks, always ahead, always out of reach, forever a pilgrim, forever unable to stop. John Fletcher, Pilgrim, Wiltshire, Southern England, 18th October, 1582. Archivist note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft road section identified near Wilton. Multiple hikers report similar figure. Search and rescue called to area unusually often for lost walkers who describe following robed figure. Recommend route avoidance after dark. Investigation yields no historical basis for legend. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. NOA 1681. S classification. Sexton statement. Date of statement 22nd August 1681. Location Essex, South East England. Author Henry Walsh, Church. Sexton statement. 1. Henry Walsh, do state what happens in our graveyard. I dig the graves and tend the grounds. I know every stone and marker. I know where each soul rests. But the graves do not stay as I leave them. Each morning I find changes. Flowers placed on stones. Fresh blooms that were not there at dusk. No one in the village admits to leaving them. Stones cleaned of moss and lichen, scrubbed until the names show clearly. I do not clean them. I have not the time for such work. Paths swept of leaves and debris, raked smooth as if freshly tended. I leave them covered each evening. Someone works in the night, caring for the dead while the living sleep. I decided to watch one night, hid myself among the yew trees, waited to see who came. The moon was bright enough to see clearly. Near midnight, I saw movement. Figures emerged from between the stones, not from the village, from the graves themselves. They rose like mist from earth, taking form as they ascended. Men and women in burial clothes, some recent, some ancient, all moving with purpose through the yard. They tended their own graves, cleaned their own stones, left flowers at the markers of loved ones. They worked in complete silence, no word spoken, no sound of tools or movement, everything done with ghostly quiet. I watched one woman kneel at a small grave, a child's marker with carved lamb. She placed wildflowers at the stone, touched the name with tender care. Her face showed grief still fresh, though she must have died decades ago. An old man swept the path, back and forth with steady rhythm, the same path he must have walked in life, maintaining the churchyard as he always had. They worked for perhaps an hour. Then, as the night deepened, they faded, sinking back into earth, returning to their rest. The graveyard stood empty again, but the work remained. Clean stones and swept paths, fresh flowers on forgotten graves. I no longer question the changes. I understand now who does this work. The dead care for their own. They tend the ground where they rest. They remember loved ones who lie nearby. Death has not ended their devotion, has not stopped their caretaking. They are the true keepers of this place. I am merely the living assistant, working by day while they work by night. Together, we maintain this ground. Together, we honor those who rest here. I leave tools out now, rake and shears in easy reach. Though they need no mortal implements, their hands work by different means. But I want them to know that I understand, that I approve, that I am grateful for their help. The graveyard has never looked better. Living and dead in partnership, all devoted to the same purpose, keeping this ground sacred. Henry Walsh, Church Sexton, Essex, South East England, 22nd August, 1681. Archivist. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Graveyard maintenance continues without clear living caretaker. Parish records show sexton position vacant since 1994. Grounds remain immaculately kept. Fresh flowers appear regularly despite no flower beds or local florists. Local teens dare each other to visit at midnight. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1718. A classification. Prioress's record. Date of statement 10th May 1718. Location Gloucestershire, Southwest England. Author Mother Prioress Eleanor Gray. Record wine. Mother Prioress Eleanor Gray. Do record the sister who prays in the chapel. Our convent has 32 sisters. I know each one by sight and name, but sometimes I count 33. An extra figure kneels in prayer, always in the same spot. The third pew from the front, left side near the pillar. She wears our habit, her head bowed in devotion, her hands clasped before her. I approached her once after Vespers. The other sisters had left the chapel. Only this one remained. I touched her shoulder gently. My hand found nothing solid. She was not there. Yet I saw her clearly, kneeling in that pew. I walked around to see her face. She had none. The hood shadowed only emptiness. No features beneath the fabric. No body within the robes. Only the suggestion of form. The idea of a sister at prayer. I researched our convent records, found mention of Sister Marjorie. She lived here 100 years ago, known for her devotion to prayer. She spent every spare moment in the chapel. That pew was her favoured spot. Near the pillar, where candlelight was dim, she preferred the shadows for her prayers. She died during evening vespers, collapsed in that very pew. Her heart simply stopped while she prayed. The other sisters said she died smiling, happy to leave the world while at worship. Now she continues her devotion. Death interrupted her prayers only briefly. She returned to her place. To the pew she loved, to the prayer that defined her life. Other sisters have seen her too. Sister Anne sees her most often. She says Sister Marjorie's presence brings peace, that the chapel feels more holy when she appears. We no longer fear the sight. We include her in our count. 33 sisters in our convent, 32 living, one who lingers in prayer. I believe she is content. She has what she wanted in life, eternal prayer, unending devotion, no interruptions or distractions. Only the chapel and God, forever and always. We will not disturb her peace. We will not try to move her on. She belongs here as much as any of us, perhaps more. Her devotion surpasses ours. She gave her life to prayer. Now she gives her death to it as well. The chapel is richer for her presence, holier for her endless devotion. We are blessed to share this space with her, blessed to pray alongside such dedication. Sister Marjorie of our convent, forever in the third pew, forever at her prayers, forever one of us. Mother Prioress Eleanor Gray, Gloucestershire, Southwest England, 10th May 1718. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, convent dissolved in 1780. Building converted to private estate. Current owners report figure in old-fashioned nun's habit in former chapel. Appears most often during evening hours. Numerous photographs show unexplained shadow in third pew. Presence described as peaceful. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1654Q. Classification: Canon's testimony. Date of statement: 14th January 1654. Location: Lincolnshire, Eastern England. Author: Canon Richard Pemberton. Testimony: Why Canon Richard Pemberton. Do testify about the book that writes itself. In our library, we keep ancient manuscripts. Some date back 500 years, carefully maintained and catalogued. One volume sits apart from the others, bound in dark leather. No title on the spine, no author marked within. The pages contain religious meditations, written in Latin. The hand is elegant and practiced, but the manuscript is never finished. New pages appear regularly. The handwriting continues where it left off. Same script, same ink, same parchment that matches the rest. I have watched this book for 3 years. When I first examined it, 200 pages were filled. Now it contains 260. 60 new pages of text, written by no living hand. I sealed the book in a locked chest. I alone held the key. 2 weeks later, I checked. 3 new pages had appeared. The lock remained secure. No one had entered the library, yet the writing continued. I sat in the library one night, placed the book on the table before me, watched it by candlelight. Near midnight, I saw movement on the page, words forming in the empty space. The ink appeared as if from nowhere, letter by letter, word by word, sentence by sentence. I saw no hand holding a pen, no figure sitting at the table, only the book itself, and the writing that continued. I tried to touch the page as words formed. My finger came away black with fresh ink. The writing paused, then resumed around where I had touched. The text discusses the nature of eternity, how souls persist beyond the body, how purpose transcends death. The author was clearly a scholar, learned in theology and philosophy. The arguments are sophisticated, the Latin flawless. I searched our records for similar handwriting, found a match in letters from 1450. Canon Michael Bradford. He served this cathedral for 40 years, devoted his life to religious scholarship. He began a great work in his final years, a comprehensive meditation on the immortal soul. Death came before he could complete it. The unfinished manuscript was added to our library. Now it continues. 200 years after the author's death, his work progresses toward completion. Canon Bradford writes from beyond the grave, finishing what he started in life. I calculated at the current pace. The manuscript will be complete in 7 years. Perhaps then Canon Bradford will rest. Perhaps then his purpose will be fulfilled. Until that time, he continues, night after night, page after page, forever devoted to his scholarship, forever bound to his great work. I check the manuscript monthly now, watch its steady progress. Soon it will be the most comprehensive work on the soul ever written, authored by a man who knows death firsthand, who writes from experience rather than speculation, who understands eternity from within it. Canon Richard Pemberton, Lincolnshire, Eastern England, 14th January 1654, Archivist. Verse note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft manuscript located in private collection. Final entry dated 1661, totaling 387 pages. Final words, it is finished, I may rest now. No subsequent additions recorded. Handwriting analysis confirms single author throughout. Ink composition identical across 2-century span. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1573. Classification Abbott's account. Date of statement 6 September 1573. Location Derbyshire, Central England. Author Abbot Thomas Reed. Account 1 Abbot Thomas Reed. Do account for what resides in our well. The monastery well provides our water. Stone-lined and deep, fed by underground springs. The water is always cold and pure, but something else dwells in those depths. We hear it at night, a voice calling from below, echoing up through the darkness, Latin words we cannot quite distinguish. The voice is hollow and strange, as if speaking through water. Brother Paul lowered a light into the well. Rope and lamp descending into black. The voice grew louder as the light went down, more urgent and desperate. Brother Paul saw movement in the water far below, something pale and shifting beneath the surface. He pulled the lamp back quickly, too frightened to continue. We researched the well's history, found a troubling account from 1450. A young monk named Brother Stephen. He fell into the well during winter. The water was frozen at the top. His brothers broke the ice to retrieve him, but he had sunk too deep. They could not reach him. They heard him calling for 3 days, his voice growing weaker. Then silence. They sealed the well for a month, spoke prayers over the opening. When they reopened it, they found only water. Brother Stephen's body was never recovered. Now his voice returns from the depths, still calling, still seeking rescue that will never come. We draw water carefully now. Lower the bucket slowly. Sometimes it comes up cold beyond reason, ice cold even in summer, as if touched by something frozen. The voice does not speak every night. Sometimes weeks pass in silence. Then it returns, always at night, always in Latin, always with that hollow echo. We have tried to help him, lowered ropes for him to grab, but they pull up empty. We have blessed the well countless times. The voice remains. I believe Brother Stephen is trapped there, caught between life and death, forever drowning, forever calling for help, unable to rise or sink completely, suspended in eternal distress. It is a terrible fate, one I pray will someday end, but I fear he will call forever, from the depths of that dark well, his voice echoing up through stone and water, a reminder of how death can trap the soul, can hold it in perpetual dying, never releasing to peace. We continue to draw our water. We have no other source, but we do not drink at night, when his voice is strongest, when the water tastes of desperation. Abbot Thomas Reed, Derbyshire, Central England, 6th September 1573. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Well sealed with concrete in 1823 after 3 separate drowning incidents. Witnesses reported hearing voice calling moments before each death. Acoustic testing in 1975 detected sound emanation from sealed well. Source remains buried. Voice occasionally reported by nearby residents. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1727J. Classification. Psychologist's notes. Date of statement 3rd March 1727. Location Hampshire, Southern England. Author Dr. Sebastian Cole. Doctor of Mental Philosophy Clinical Notes. Dr. Sebastian Cole. Do note the peculiar case of Mr. Edward Davies. He came to me suffering from persistent visions. He claimed to see a woman in his home. She appeared in mirrors and windows. Reflected surfaces showed her face, always watching him, always with the same sorrowful expression. I initially diagnosed melancholia with sensory disturbance, prescribed rest and tonics. Mr. Davies returned a week later. His condition had worsened. The woman now spoke to him. Her voice came from the reflections, warning him of danger, begging him to remember something. He could not understand what she wanted. I visited his home to investigate. A modest house near the forest edge. He lived alone since his wife's death 2 years prior. As we spoke in his parlour, I noticed a large mirror, ornate frame above the mantel. My reflection showed clearly, but beside me stood a woman, dark hair and pale dress, her expression one of deep sadness. I turned quickly. No one stood beside me. The room held only Mr. Davies and myself. I looked again at the mirror. The woman remained. She raised her hand and pointed at Mr. Davies, then at the floor beneath his feet. Her mouth moved as if speaking. I heard nothing, but I read her lips. "Remember me," she said. "Remember what you did." I asked Mr. Davies about the woman. His face went white. He recognized my description. His wife, he said, Elizabeth Davies, who died quite suddenly 2 years ago. He found her collapsed in the parlour. The doctors called it a failure of the heart. But Mr. Davies looked guilty when he spoke of it. I pressed him further. Eventually he confessed. They had argued that day. A terrible fight over money. He pushed her in anger. She struck her head on the mantel. Died within moments. He told everyone it was natural causes. Buried her with that lie. Now she appears in the reflections, showing him what he tried to forget, reminding him of his guilt. I advised him to confess to the authorities, to give Elizabeth peace through truth. He refused, too frightened of the consequences. I left his house troubled. The woman in the mirror had watched me leave, her expression hopeful, as if she thought I might help her, but I could do nothing. 3 months later, I heard news. Mr. Davies had died in his home. They found him before the mirror, his face frozen in terror, his hands reaching toward the glass, as if trying to push someone away. I attended the burial, stood near Elizabeth's grave. I felt her gratitude somehow, as if she had finally been heard, even if justice was beyond mortal courts. Dr. Sebastian Cole, Doctor of Mental Philosophy, Hampshire, Southern England, 3rd March 1727. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft mirror from Davies' estate, acquired by Noah in 1962. Multiple viewers report seeing female figure in reflection. Appears only when mirror is in location where violence occurred. Currently in secure storage. Viewing not recommended without proper psychological preparation. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1615X. Classification Inspector's Report. Date of statement 27th July 1615. Location Sussex, South East England. Author Inspector William Cross. Parish Inspector. Official Report Y. Inspector William Cross. Do report on the abandoned house on Mill Road. The property has stood empty for 10 years. No one will purchase it despite low price. No one will even enter the grounds. The house is said to be occupied, though no living person resides there. I was tasked with investigating these claims to determine if the property could be sold. I entered the house at noon, full daylight to dispel any shadows. The interior was dusty but intact. Furniture remained from the previous owner. Everything covered in years of neglect. I walked through each room systematically. Found nothing unusual on the ground floor. The kitchen stood empty. The parlour silent. I climbed to the upper level. 4 bedrooms and a study. The first 3 rooms showed nothing of note. The 4th bedroom door was closed. I opened it. The room was freezing cold. My breath fogged immediately, like stepping into winter. The window was intact. No draught could explain the temperature. In the centre of the room stood a bed. Someone lay beneath the covers. A figure outlined under white sheets, perfectly still. I approached slowly, asked if anyone was there. No response. I reached for the sheet to pull it back. My hand stopped inches away. I could not move closer. Some force prevented me, like pushing against an invisible wall. The figure beneath the sheet sat up, still covered completely. It turned toward me, though it had no face I could see. I felt it looking at me, felt its attention like cold weight. I backed toward the door. The figure rose from the bed, stood tall and thin, the sheet draped over it like a shroud. It moved toward me, silent and slow, each step deliberate. I ran, down the stairs and out the door, did not stop until I reached the road. When I looked back, I saw it, standing in the upper window, still draped in white, still watching. I researched the house history. The previous owner died in that bedroom. An old man named Mr. Graves. He died in his sleep. They found him 3 days later, still in his bed. The sheet pulled over his face. No one had been to check on him. No one noticed he was gone. He lay there alone, dead and forgotten. Now he remains, in that frozen room, forever in his deathbed, forever waiting for someone to find him. I have marked the property as unsuitable for sale, recommended it be demolished, but the town council refuses. They fear what might be released. Better to leave the house standing, leave Mr. Graves in his room. Let him keep his lonely vigil. Some places should remain empty. Inspector William Cross, Parish Inspector Sussex, South East England, 27th July 1615. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft House, demolished in 1887, despite official recommendation against. Construction workers reported feeling watched throughout demolition. Site remains vacant lot. Thermal imaging shows persistent cold spot where bedroom once stood. Temperature differential of 12 degrees Celsius maintained year-round. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1598Y. Classification: Teacher's Statement. Date of statement: 9th December 1598. Location: Kent, South East England. Author: Master Geoffrey Blackwood. Schoolmaster Statement 1. Master Geoffrey Blackwood. Do state what occurs in my classroom. I teach reading and scripture to village children. 20 students attend each day, but sometimes I count 21. An extra child sits in the back, a boy of perhaps 10 years. He wears clothes from decades past. His face is pale as chalk. He never speaks or raises his hand, but he watches intently, following every lesson. The other children do not see him. They sit and learn unaware. Only I perceive the extra student. I first noticed him a month ago, sitting in the last row, far corner near the window. I thought him a new pupil. I asked his name. He did not respond. I approached his desk. As I drew near, he faded, like fog dispersing in sunlight. His desk stood empty, but I had seen him clearly. I asked the village elders about the boy. They knew immediately who I described. A student named Thomas White. He attended this school 30 years ago, loved his lessons above all things. Learning was his greatest joy. He died of fever during winter, only 11 years old. They say he cried because he would miss his studies. His last words were of wanting to return to school. Now he has returned. He sits in class each day, invisible to the other children, but present nonetheless, continuing his education eternally. I have grown accustomed to his attendance. I teach as if he were a living student. I include him in my count. 21 students total. 20 who will go home today. 1 who is already home. Sometimes I see him trying to write, his hand moving over an invisible slate, practicing letters in empty air. His dedication moves me deeply. Such love of learning should be rewarded. Even death should not deny education. I leave a slate and chalk on his desk now, though no living hand will touch them, though no marks will appear. The gesture feels important. Recognition of his devotion, acknowledgement of his eternal study. The other teachers think me odd. They say I speak to empty corners. They do not understand. They have not seen Thomas at his lessons, have not witnessed such dedication. I tell the children they are fortunate to learn alongside such a devoted student, even if they cannot see him. His presence reminds me why I teach, for the love of knowledge, for the joy of learning, for students who value education so deeply that even death cannot keep them from class. Thomas White will sit in my classroom forever, forever learning, forever present, forever the most devoted student I will ever teach. Master Geoffrey Blackwood, Schoolmaster Kent, South East England 9th, December 1598. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Schoolhouse converted to community centre in 1923. Staff report child-sized figure in former classroom area. Maintenance worker photographed small handprints on windows that reappear after cleaning. Always in same location. Always at height consistent with 10-year-old child. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1702U. Classification: Vicar's record. Date of statement: 15th April 1702. Location: Cheshire, Northwest England. Author, Reverend Arthur Mills. Vicar record Bourne, Reverend Arthur Mills. Do record the baptism that repeats. Every Sunday at dawn, I hear water. The sound comes from the chapel. The baptismal font echoes with pouring, water splashing into the stone basin. I investigated the first time it happened. Entered the chapel before sunrise. The font stood empty and dry. No water had been poured, yet I heard it clearly, the sound of baptism in progress. I stood beside the font and listened. Water pouring from an invisible vessel. The splash and ripple in the basin, though the stone remained completely dry. Then I heard a voice, old and formal, speaking the baptismal rites in Latin. The words echoed through the empty chapel. Ego te baptizo in nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. I recognized the formula, the ancient words of baptism, but no priest spoke them. No one stood at the font, only the voice in the air, and the sound of water that was not there. Then I heard crying, an infant wailing, the sound of a baby during baptism, frightened by the cold water, crying for mother's comfort. The sounds continued for several minutes, the complete baptismal service, every word and response, every prayer and blessing. Then silence returned. The chapel stood empty once more. I consulted the parish records, found mention of Father Edmund. He served this church 100 years ago, renowned for his beautiful baptismal services. He performed hundreds during his long tenure. His final act before death was a baptism, a child born to the mayor's family. Father Edmund collapsed during the service, died with the holy water still on his hands. The baptism was completed by another priest, but Father Edmund's service was left unfinished. Now he completes it every Sunday. At dawn he returns to the font, performs the baptism again, and again, and again, forever repeating his final duty, forever finishing what death interrupted. The other clergy have heard it too. We no longer try to stop it. We let Father Edmund perform his service. Let him complete his eternal baptism. Some duties are too important to abandon. Some services too sacred to leave unfinished. Even death must wait for their completion. I have tried to attend his invisible service, to stand witness to his devotion. But when I am present, the sounds grow faint, as if he works better without an audience. So I leave him to his task. Let him baptize in solitude. Let him serve his God in his own way. The font is always dry when I check it, but the sound of water never stops. Every Sunday at dawn, forever and always. Father Edmund at his eternal duty. Reverend Arthur Mills, Vicar Cheshire. Northwest England, 15th April, 1702. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Audio recording attempted in 1994. Equipment captured sound of water and Latin speech at documented time. Voice pattern analysis suggests male speaker, age 60-70. No modern comparison possible. Phenomenon continues weekly without variation. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1663Z. Classification: Librarian's Testament. Date of statement: 11th August 1663. Location: Cambridge, Eastern England. Author: Master Robert Ashfield, University Librarian Hesmondford. Master Robert Ashfield, do testify about the scholar in the library. I oversee the university collection. Thousands of volumes in my care. I know every regular reader, every student and fellow who visits, but one reader comes at night, after the library closes, after I lock the doors. He sits at the same table every time. Near the philosophy section, a candle burns beside him, though I light no candles before leaving. Books lie open before him, different volumes each night, all from the same area of study, philosophy and theology texts, the most complex and ancient works. I discovered him accidentally. I returned late one evening, had forgotten some papers in my office. I saw light under the library door, thought perhaps a student had hidden inside. I opened the door quietly. The scholar sat at his table, head bent over a massive tome. His hand moved across the page, taking notes on loose parchment. I called out to ask his business. He did not respond, did not look up from his work. I approached closer. I recognized his face from a portrait. Dr. Henry Blackwell, the greatest scholar this university ever produced, dead for 40 years, yet sitting at his customary table, continuing his research. I stood frozen in shock. He turned a page carefully, adjusted his candle for better light. His concentration was absolute. Then he looked up at me. His eyes were empty spaces, dark hollows where eyes should be, but I felt him see me nonetheless. He smiled gently, put a finger to his lips, a gesture for silence. The library was his church, his sacred space. I was interrupting his worship. I left quietly. Let him continue his work. I have returned many nights since. He's always there, always reading, always taking his careful notes. I examined the books he studies. They are arranged differently each morning. Returned to shelves I know I did not touch. His notes remain on the table sometimes, written in his distinctive hand, the same script I have seen in his published works. The notes discuss complex philosophical questions, problems he was working on when he died, arguments he never completed. Now he continues his scholarship. Death has given him endless time to study, to read every book he never had time for in life, to complete every argument he began. The library is his eternal office, the books his eternal companions. He will study here forever, turning pages through the centuries, taking notes no living person will read, pursuing knowledge beyond death itself. I have come to treasure his presence. He reminds me why this place exists, for the love of learning, for devotion to knowledge, for those who value wisdom above all else. Dr. Blackwell loved this library more than life. Now he loves it more than death. I make sure his section remains accessible, that his favorite books stay available, that a table near the philosophy text stays empty, for the scholar who will never leave, for the student who will never graduate, for the reader who has found his eternal home. Master Robert Ashfield, University Librarian, Cambridge, Eastern England, 11th August, 1663. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Library extensively rebuilt in 1850s. Philosophy section relocated to different building. Security cameras show unexplained light source near philosophy shelves after hours. Books found open on reading tables most mornings. No physical evidence of entry. Devotion to learning transcends architecture. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1556, I classification. Physician's notes. Date of statement 23rd June 1556. Location Suffolk, Eastern England. Author Dr. Philip Ashworth, Physician Medical Notation Y, Dr. Philip Ashworth. Do note a patient I cannot treat. A woman visits my practice every fortnight. She appears at dusk without fail. She complains of pain in her chest, difficulty drawing breath, weakness in her limbs. I examine her carefully each time. I find no physical cause for her distress. Her heart beats steadily. Her lungs sound clear, yet she insists the pain is real, that death approaches. On her third visit, I recognized her. Margaret Foster. She died 2 months ago. I attended her final illness. The same chest pain she describes now. The same breathing difficulties. She died in her bed at home. I signed the death certificate myself. Yet she comes to me for treatment, unaware that she has already died. Trapped in her final illness, repeating her last days. I do not tell her the truth. What purpose would it serve? She would not believe me. Or worse, she would understand. And that knowledge might trap her more deeply. I treat her as I would any patient. I prescribe rest and herbal remedies. She thanks me and leaves. She will return in 2 weeks, with the same complaints, the same fears of approaching death. I will examine her again, find nothing wrong, prescribe the same useless treatments. This is my eternal duty now, to care for a patient who cannot be cured, who is already beyond my help, but who needs the comfort of medical attention. Other physicians have seen her too. She visits multiple doctors in the region, seeking relief that will never come. Each of us plays our part. We examine and prescribe. She visits and departs. An endless cycle of illness. Treatment without cure. Hope without resolution. I have considered trying to help her move on, to tell her she has died, that her suffering is over. But I fear the truth would cause worse pain. Better to let her believe treatment is possible. Better to give her hope, even if that hope is false. She is a good woman, kind and gentle. She does not deserve this fate. To die forever, to remain eternally ill, to seek cure that cannot come. I will continue to see her. Every fortnight without fail. I will examine her with care, prescribe what remedies I can, offer what comfort remains possible. It is all I can do for Margaret Foster, my eternal patient, forever dying, forever seeking help, forever unable to find peace. Dr. Philip Ashworth, Physician, Suffolk, Eastern England, 23rd June, 1556. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Multiple medical practitioners in Suffolk region reported similar encounters, 1556 to 1603. Descriptions consistent with Margaret Foster. Last reported sighting in 1608. Possibly found peace, or doctors stopped documenting visits. No modern reports. Some hauntings do end. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1731 O classification. Manager's account. Date of statement 8th January 1731. Location Yorkshire, Northern England. Author Mr. William Foster. Inn manager. Business account Y. Mr. William Foster. Do account for room 12 in my inn. The Blue Swan has welcomed travellers for 100 years. 16 rooms available for lodging. Room 12 remains perpetually occupied, though I rent it to no one. A guest resides there permanently, a man who will never check out. His name was James Morton, a merchant travelling north on business. He took room 12 for 3 nights, paid in advance as was customary. On his second night, he did not come down for dinner. I went to check on his welfare. I knocked on his door. No response came. I used my key to enter. Mr. Morton sat in the chair by the window, staring out at the street below. I spoke his name. He did not turn or acknowledge me. I approached closer, touched his shoulder. He was cold as winter stone, dead for several hours. A cup of tea sat beside him, still half full. His face showed no distress, as if death came as gently as sleep. We buried him in the churchyard. No family came forward to claim him. He rests there still under a simple marker. But he did not leave my inn. The next guest in room 12 fled in the night. Claimed a man sat in the chair, watching him while he slept. When he tried to speak to the figure, it vanished. Every guest since reports the same thing. A man sitting by the window, always in the same position, staring out at the street, waiting for something that never comes. I have stopped renting room 12. The loss of income is worth the peace. No more frightened guests, no more midnight disturbances. But Mr. Morton remains. I see him sometimes when I pass the door. A shadow by the window, eternally keeping vigil. I do not know what he waits for. Perhaps the business partner who never arrived. Perhaps the opportunity that brought him north. Perhaps simply the strength to stand, to leave that chair and walk out the door. But he stays. Day after day, year after year, sitting by the window, looking down at the street, forever waiting. I keep the room clean, dust the furniture regularly, change the bedding though it is never disturbed. It feels respectful. He was my guest when he died. He remains my guest now. The other rooms stay profitable. Travellers enjoy the Blue Swan. They never complain about room 12. Most do not know it exists. I removed it from my ledger, crossed it out of the room count. Now we have 15 rooms for rent and 1 permanent resident, Mr. Morton in his chair. Forever my guest, forever waiting, forever unable to leave. I pray someday he will stand, walk to the door, step out into the hall, find his way to whatever awaits him. But until then, he has a home, room 12 at the Blue Swan, where James Morton will always be welcome, where he will always belong. Mr. William Foster, Inn Manager, Yorkshire, Northern England, 8th January 1731. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Blue Swan Inn, demolished in 1889. Guest registry recovered showing room 12 crossed out from 1731 onwards. Modern hotel built on site reports, strange occurrence in room corresponding to old room 12. Guest complaints of feeling watched by window. Management now avoids assigning that room. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1628D. Classification. Detective's report. Date of statement 19th October 1628. Location: Nottinghamshire, Central England. Author: Constable Richard Hale. Investigation Report 1. Constable Richard Hale. Do report on the figure in Sherwood Forest. Local villagers report a woman walking the woods. She appears at twilight. Moves between the ancient oaks, never deviating from a specific path. She wears a grey cloak and hood. Her face remains hidden. She carries a basket over her arm. Multiple witnesses describe identical details. Always the same route. Always the same appearance. I decided to investigate these claims. I entered the forest at dusk, positioned myself along the reported path. As darkness gathered, I saw her, emerging from between the trees, walking with steady purpose. I stepped forward to intercept her, to ask her business in these woods after dark. She passed within 3 feet of me, did not acknowledge my presence, did not slow or turn. I called out to her. She continued walking. I moved to block her path. She walked through me, through my body as if I were empty air. I felt a rush of cold, a chill that reached my very bones. Then she was behind me, continuing on her path. I turned to follow. She walked another 50 yards, then simply faded, like smoke dispersing in wind. One moment visible, the next gone completely. I investigated the local history. An old woman told me about Sarah Wright, a healer who lived in these woods over 200 years ago. She gathered herbs and plants, used them to make medicines. She walked the same path every evening, from her cottage to a particular grove, where certain plants grew in abundance. One autumn evening she did not return. Search parties found her 3 days later, collapsed on her gathering path, her basket beside her, dead from natural causes it seemed. Her heart had simply stopped. Now she continues her gathering, every evening at twilight, walking her familiar route, collecting herbs that no longer exist, performing duties that death did not end. I have seen her 5 times since, always the same path, always the same steady pace. I no longer try to stop her. She has her work to do, her gathering to complete. Death interrupted her purpose. Now she fulfills it eternally. The villagers have learned to accept her presence. They call her the Grey Gatherer. They step aside when she passes. They do not interfere with her work. Some leave offerings where she walks, bundles of herbs tied with ribbon, gifts for the eternal healer. The offerings are gone by morning. Whether she takes them or animals scatter them, I cannot say, but the gesture brings comfort, connection between living and dead, between those who gather and she who cannot stop gathering. Constable Richard Hale, Nottinghamshire, Central England, 19th October, 1628. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Path, still visible in modern Sherwood Forest. Local hiking club maintains traditional offerings of dried herbs at trailhead. Dozens of witnesses over 4 centuries report woman in grey. Forest rangers note path rarely needs clearing. Something keeps it open. End of file. Case closed to public record. The original document remains sealed within the vaults of the British Museum. The NOA archive remains committed to documenting phenomena that defy conventional understanding. These cases are submitted for academic review and further investigation. Further access requires written authorization or curiosity strong enough to ignore the warnings. Until next time. These are the National Occult Archives.